Good afternoon, everyone. This is Joe from Boston again on our last Ask an AEC Professional of the week for our challenge that we have going on through the future of construction. As all before, I'm joined by Kellyanne from Autodesk as well, our fearless facilitator. And today we have a special guest, Erin Khan, who's from Suffolk Construction, who you heard from as a company earlier last week. She's going to tell us what it's like to be in the construction field. And we're excited to hear more about how you got to where you are today. So take us away, Erin.
All right, thanks for having me. First of all, so a little bit on my background. I'm Erin. I'm a construction solutions director with Suffolk Construction. We're a general contractor, which means that we build all types of buildings. And we work on extended teams that include the architect, engineers, clients, subcontractors, to kind of make it all happen. But I ended up coming into construction by way of my degree in civil engineering. So I studied civil engineering in undergrad at the University of Southern California. And then my very first internship was on a construction site, just learning how to manage the building process, working with all sorts of different partners on the job to make it go smoothly. And then I kind of got into doing all of that full time. And then in this industry specifically with construction, there are a crazy amount of opportunities, so many opportunities to use technology. So what I do now in my role is take technology systems, different software platforms, different hardware platforms, and work with our project teams to use a lot of cool tech to make the building process go faster, cost less money over the whole project, and be safer overall. So I mainly run all of that stuff through what we call our collab space. So you can think of it as a construction lab, and that's what you see behind me. This is a snapshot of the Los Angeles construction lab. So there's a lot of high-tech screens, a lot of visualization tools, and I help our operations teams that are building the projects kind of make that all come together. So I can dive into some specifics, and I'm going to share my screen. Give me 1 minute here. See how this works out. Okay, does the screen share look okay?
Yep, you're good.
Excellent. So what you're seeing on the screen here, this is one perspective of our project. And what's really, really neat about this is that the team is using a very special hardware, a very special hard hat that has a 360 camera on it to get this kind of a Google Street Map view image of the job. So one of the really, really cool things is that we can basically take a remote tour of the job to check on progress. So we can see back in time what the job looked like at a certain point. And also in this use case, we can see exactly what's behind the walls. So if you've ever wondered what does a building look like before it's finished, this is a good image that kind of shows you all the parts and pieces that go into making a building stand up. So we have a lot of framing here. You can see there's some wires coming down for electrical. Eventually there will be plumbing pipes. I think you can see those here. And a lot of different things go into the building. And then we can see the progress throughout time. So this is what it starts to look like as the job gets finished, which is super, super cool to see all the hard work that the team is putting in to make it progress smoothly. So this is one technology, the camera hard hat, that I work with the teams to implement and then get some really great imagery out of at the end. So let's see, another tool that we have through the collabs, and if you take a look at my background image, it's the small 4 screens that are like right around just to the left of me, I believe. But this is one tool that we use to also track progress and see how things are going on the job. What's really, really cool in construction is that there are a variety of different building types as well. This one in particular that we see here, this is a really special project up in San Francisco. And this one is pretty much just like Lego building blocks. It's something that we call prefab modular in the industry. So this is a modular construction type. And what that means is that basically all the parts are pre-made and they're being snapped into place just like Legos. So this is actually happening in real time. So as we're talking here, you can see that the workers are snapping in a unit into place. And it goes very, very quickly, which is amazing. So this is one very specific type of construction and innovative approach that lets us build faster, safer, you name it. And then of course, having this live feed camera is pretty special. So we at Suffolk and through the collabs technology-wise, just have another way of communicating throughout the country, which is really special. So that's another tool that we use to accelerate the building process. So I'm going to check back in and see, are there any questions in the chat at this time?
No, I don't think so. I think you can keep going, Erin, and then we'll
Okay,
hop into questions when you're done with your presentation.
great. I will keep rolling right along then. So then another big piece of what I do in the construction lab and work with on the teams is 3D modeling. So this is a Navisworks model. So this is a software that brings in a 3D representation of the building, and it's got all the different project components in it. So this specifically is a beach resort. It has the foundations of what it takes to build the building. It's got the structural framework, the plumbing that will bring, all the water services to the building, the air handling information, the mechanical system in there. So literally everything is merged all into this 3D model. And our goal is to essentially make this a digital twin of what we're going to build out in real life. So having the model before we go to build gives you a lot of different capabilities with being able to coordinate. So one of the big problems in construction is that you really have to understand exactly where every little part and piece is going to go in your building. Otherwise, when you go to build, you might run into issues where you're trying to have 2 things in the same place that can't be there, or something just doesn't work out with the dimensions. So having an idea of what it looks like ahead of time is super powerful. So this is a tool that lets the architect who's designing the building see exactly what their design looks like. It lets the trade partners and subcontractors that are working on very specific pieces of the building understand where their own system is falling into line. And it also lets the general contractor that's So what we do at Suffolk, kind of pull all of those pieces together to make it really cohesive and a smooth building process out in the field. But also through the collabs, we take this and we turn it into a virtual reality experience. So this kind of gets into a little bit of gaming capabilities. It gets into a really immersive level of communication. When I first started my career path in construction, I never thought that I would be doing things like virtual reality gaming setups in a way to help communicate construction, building design, and coordination. But that's what I do day to day. So one example of that, bear with me while I switch over. Okay, so this is an example of a virtual reality scene that we've developed. And this, interestingly enough, is a model of our New York collab. So you can see that we can get a really good tour experience. And in the collab, we have things like a data wall, which is this gigantic touchscreen. So we use it to show all different project data. We can show all the tools and the tech that we are trying out in the lab. So it gives a really great presentation interface that's very interactive, and we can pull up literally infinite data sources to kind of drive smarter meetings. This here is our long, what we call huddle wall. So it spans across the whole wall. And it helps facilitate things like poll planning, which is what you see here with the sticky notes, the digital sticky notes. This is critical in construction to coordinate schedule and keep everybody on task. So this is a very sophisticated, efficient method of doing that. And then we also have our job site feeds. This is what I pointed out before with that special modular project that's kind of like Legos. And then we also have virtual reality caves. So in here, you can put on a headset. The one that I have is the HTC Vive. We're looking into getting Oculus Quest. So again, kind of getting back into that gaming technology experience applied to construction through use of the 3D model. It all comes together in this space. So you can really see and experience a building before you go to build it. Another example, and we have quite a few here. Let's see, I think this one's pretty cool. So this is an operating room. So imagine trying to build this operating room before you know what it's like. It will be pretty challenging. So what we did here, we had this model created so that the surgeons, the doctors, the people who will be working and using this space at the end of the day can experience the layout and really understand where all the equipment is, will the function of where everything's placed work for them, so that we can catch any modifications that are needed early on. So things you may not even think about, like having enough power here in the middle to service all the equipment, or will the layout work if we have a door set on this end of the room, or should we relocate the door to another end of the room? What's the optimal layout? Those are things that we want to catch very, very early on, because it's very expensive when you try to change it in the middle of the job. So this is one other example of taking that 3D model that we coordinate with something like Navisworks or Revit, and then pushing it into some sort of gaming experience like this, where everybody can understand exactly what it is that we're trying to build. And then we have a bunch of other scenes too. Let's see. This is actually a good one too. So this this example here, the collabs are also very, very focused on safety. This is one innovative approach that we've taken or tested so far for safety tracking. So in this one, it's a little bit of a game. So you have to be able to identify different safety issues in this building that's mocked up here. Let me see if I can switch the levels. There we go. And then you can also get a tour of a project before you step on site. So safety is very, very critical in construction because it can be risky with some of the things that you have to do. So understanding the layout, different requirements. This is like a dark area, for instance. You want to make sure that you're fully lit, that you have all the right and appropriate equipment for your job. So this gives somebody a chance to walk the job without actually being in danger and understand some of the hazards and how to mitigate that on the site. So let me get out of this and see how that's working. Okay. So any questions? I feel like I went over a lot there.
Yeah, that was awesome, Erin. That was super interesting, and I love how much technology you get to use. Your job seems very fun. I'm very jealous of you. I have a bunch of questions. I'm sure Kellyanne has some questions as well, but I just kind of wanted to rewind it back a little bit. You said you went to school for civil engineering. I was just wondering, first of all, there's tons of different kinds of engineering. What is civil engineering, and sort of what led you to, that to be your pathway?
Yeah, so I guess I'll start with what led it to be my pathway, which is pretty curious because I did 13 years of music in high school, piano, violin, voice, and I kind of thought I would end up in the arts, but I wasn't really sure. I had no idea what I wanted to do, really, as do we all, right? So when I went to school, I started as an undecided major, and I tried so many different classes, which I'm really glad I did, and I would encourage anybody that's listening to explore a few different topics before you lock yourself into one major. There's a lot of things to experience up there. So my first year being undecided, I tried things like Japanese, psychology, sociology, but I also did math and some technical courses. And I found that I really enjoyed problem solving. Math was a really great way that I found to, support other people. And that's where the connection to civil engineering also came from. With civil engineering, it's a field that really focuses on constructing and building, creating things that service the public and others. So if you think about airports, roadways, highways, bridges, and the buildings that we all live in, your house, where we go to work, concert venues where we go for entertainment, that's all the results of civil engineers coming up with the design and figuring out a way to make it work for the people. So I was really pulled towards that connection between the technical, but also giving back in a way to the community and supporting people. So it's interesting though too, because in civil engineering, you can also go into construction, which is where I ended up in. And construction, it's a very, very interesting industry. I, really had my eyes open my first internship, and I think I'm always learning something new every single day, whether it's a new project type, like the one I showed that has the modular cubes coming out. It's it's just exciting. So it really keeps me on my toes, and I'm super glad that I found civil engineering and found construction, and here I am taking the very best of technology that we have and bringing it to the industry.
It's really cool, Erin, how throughout this series this week with our STEM chats that art has been kind of an interest in art has been a common theme and a common entry point amongst the professionals that we learned from this week. One of the things I was thinking about as you're showing us the tour is what's a type of building, like if you, I know that you love probably all buildings because of the because of your work, but what is like a type of building that you get really excited about building if you get assigned to that project?
Let me see. So I've been on a couple renovation jobs where the end result was to take an old building and turn it into a new museum space. So I think those types of jobs, the reno jobs, and they were both historical too, now that I think about it. So those historical renovation jobs are really incredible. You get to see something that somebody designed maybe 100 years ago, and it's been preserved to a certain extent, but for whatever reason, it needs updating, and you need to preserve that integrity of what was created in the past, but also modernize it for usage of people today. Seeing that transformation process and working with the team to make that a reality is really special, to see that evolve over time through the experience of it. I'm recalling pulling up some hand drawings from the 1920s or 30s on one of my past projects, and just understanding that, you know, now we have digital tools that can bring that to a whole different level of how we build, and it's just such a cool experience.
So cool. Construction is such a great industry to get into if you are interested in making things, but want those things to stay around for a long time. So super cool. Thank you.
We do actually have a question in the chat. How do you envision transportation in the future, you know, looking forward? All the
Well,
technology we have.
yeah, it's tough with transportation because updating a transportation system takes a lot of time. When you look at some of the rail projects, it kind of seems like they go on for forever. But I personally would love to see a lot more high-speed rail development, bullet trains. It would just be amazing to have that level of service. I know it is expensive and takes forever to build, but I think that would be a really great tool that we could have to connect our communities.
Along similar lines, just thinking about the future, you know, we have students working on a project, developing a solution in their community around environmental justice, or locally we have an island that many of the students go on throughout the year to learn about things like biodiversity, biology, all those kinds of the ecosystem. And so they're coming up with these solutions. So I'm wondering, thinking of the future of construction, how do you see things becoming more green, more sustainable in the industry, from your perspective, again, having access to all this technology?
Yeah, I think the transformation to being greener and more sustainable has been slow in the past, but it's definitely picked up a lot in recent years, which am thrilled about. I think from my perspective, it may not be so much of a technology thing as right now just getting people to understand the urgency behind it and why we should do it. It's funny, the call I was on just before this was a carbon emissions forum to see how we can reduce carbon impact in the construction industry. So we do see new things coming out like carbon emission calculators, so you can just understand what it is that the impact you're having on whatever it is that you're doing. So I think we really need to start there and get a better sense and understanding of where the big drivers are, and then we can start really digging in and tackling those solutions. Again, it's been a little slow, but I have seen a fair amount of startups too, that are starting to focus on solving these big problems. And I only think it's going to get more and more traction as time passes. Specifically in construction as well, there are a lot of different groups and I guess credentials that you can get. So I myself, I'm a lead AP BD plus C professional, which means that I'm certified to understand different rating systems through the LEED forum. And what that means is that with buildings in particular, right now you can get certain ratings that say this building operates at X percentage that makes it green or whatever standard it's at. So, those are the things that we are seeing that are kind of taking off and really starting to raise that awareness level. So I'm excited to see the changes.
Great. We're running out of time, so maybe a couple more questions. We do have one more question in the chat box. Will it be possible to refurbish old construction with green construction? And I think, I'd be interested to hear in that project you worked on that older building and renovating it, what are the changes you're seeing in terms of when we're redoing a building or renovating a building? How are we implementing, better practices around green infrastructure and sustainability and whatnot?
Yeah, actually kind of going back to the LEED certification too, there's a whole recycled content rating that you can get for your building amongst other criteria. So it kind of depends on what level you're shooting for in terms of getting that certification for your building, but that's one of the incentives is taking material from the old building or anything that you've demolished and finding creative ways to reuse it or keep it intact, reduce waste, reduce carbon emission, etc. Reduce haul off to big trash piles, right? So that's one of the things. Also with historic buildings, one of the special things I've seen, if it's historic status, it's typically required to keep a lot of the elements of the building intact. So a lot of times you have to find creative ways to work around keeping or not demolishing or preserving very, very special elements of the building, which of course reduces waste and just keeps it a little bit more sustainable. I think too with designers keeping in mind different design approaches for buildings that can help over the long term. This is a good incentive as well to promote that practice through the building process.
Amazing. Well, I think we got one more question we usually end on here for these STEM chats, and just wanted to, if you have any advice for the students who are listening in terms of if they want a career just like yours, what should they be doing now if they're in middle school or even when they're looking towards high school to make sure they're kind of on the right track?
Yeah. Again, my own experience, just try different things, find what you like. Do well in school, that always helps. Getting into an engineering program was a little eye-opening for me because I switched from undecided into engineering. So definitely keeping the grades up helped with that. And yeah, just explore, be passionate, and then don't get discouraged if you don't really know what you want to do. That's okay. I wish somebody had told me that a little bit earlier. It's okay not to know exactly what you want to get into. You'll get there. But yeah, just be passionate, explore, and yeah, stay in school.
You heard that, kid. Stay in school. Well, thank you so much, Erin. This has been eye-opening, and your job is so cool. Thank you for your time today, and we look forward to continuing to connect with you. If we get any other questions from the students, we'll be sure to forward them your way.
Thank you so
Awesome.
much, Erin. This was so awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Really appreciate it.
Great. Bye-bye. Thanks.
Alrighty, bye.